brave souls for cool. So yeah, so today I'm going to be speaking about creating an inclusive web. And now in my house we have this L-shaped couch, and everyone fights to sit on the L-shaped bit, isn't it? That's the bit you sit down, that's the bit you rest on. And myself and my husband, we have this ongoing battle on who's the first person to get to the L-shaped couch, to that bit once the kids are asleep, isn't it? I mean, it's my couch. I paid half for it. We're empowered now. You can't have it all the time, isn't it? And one day I said to him, why are you always like rushing to this part of it? Why is it that you like literally, women first, give me space? And he was like, I've got a bad hand. And that's the only bit I can rest and sit comfortably here. And, because that's not my lived experience, it didn't really occur to me that there was any reason, apart from greed, why he wanted to sit down in that space. And that's why this topic became really important to me, because as marketers, we have so much influence. And sometimes we don't realize how much influence we have. I mean, I know the email community is not really on Twitter, but if you go to Twitter, that's where all the SEO gigs, and we are very, very, we pride ourselves in being really, really on top of all the human rights issues and everything. Give us a course, we'll jump on it like a house on fire. But then the things that are within our space to change, we totally ignore because, it's not in my KPI. It doesn't make me money. I can't report on it, yada, yada, yada. So I'm just going to be, highlighting a few quick ways so that you can get to your beers quickly. I know it's 2:35 on a Friday. So I'm just going to whiz through this quickly and so we can get moving. Yeah. Just a quick introduction of myself. I've been in the SEO world for about 14 years. I also do PPC as well. 11 years agency side. So I'm happy to answer any SEO PPC questions. If you see me around, just stop me, ask me anything. Currently the head of SEO at John Lewis Finance. And yeah, that's my Twitter handle if you dabble in Twitter, and then my website. Cool. Now, since COVID, we've seen loads of services move online. Loads of services. If you live in the UK, this will be your, like, getting a GP's appointment. Good luck. You call at 8 o'clock, no one picks. You go online, there is a 10-page form to tell them about toothache. So good luck with that. All prescription services have moved online as well. In addition to that, 54 banks close a day. Everyone's moving online. 50 shops close in the UK every day. And I think the key thing is that people think that there are alternatives to all of these essential services, but they're not really alternatives because these services have just closed and they direct everyone online. And online, it's very hard to speak to someone. I've been trying to book tickets for my parents through services like eDream and Kiwi, and there is no way of contacting them except you have a booking number. But then I'm having problems booking. How do I contact them if I can't book? And without a booking number, no one picks up the phone. So you can see the kind of barriers that are online for people who are trying to access all of these services. And this research shows us that by 2025, because of all of these moves to online services, the gap between the rich and the poor will widen up because people will not be able to access all of these services. Now, one of the key reasons why people don't invest in this is because they just feel like, disabled people will not access services online. They'll have other alternatives. There are not enough people for us to sell to. However, as we can see, there are 135 million in the EU alone. 1 in 30 people have a sight disability. And there are various forms of disability. So it's not just can you see or can you not see? And the way that we think about it is if people can't see, they will call. But there are a range of disabilities. And it shows that people who are disabled, because in this survey conducted by the web AIM, it shows that the higher the level of disability, the more independent people want to be. So if people are striving to be independent, if people are training themselves how to access all these services, why are we the ones putting up barriers? Now, these people who struggle to access the webs are one of the people we don't think about them when we're marketing, isn't it? We're thinking about catchy headlines, we're thinking about open rates, we're not thinking about how people who are disabled will access our content or how they'll understand it. And it's key to this is that when people feel, we talk about branding, we talk about personalization. When people feel that you are communicating to them, when people feel that you are responding to their needs, they would have affinity for that brand. This is a research by the Clickaway Pound that shows us that 17 billion is being lost because people can't access your site. So there is definitely money in it. If I go to a website and I find it easy to use and I find that it caters for my disabilities, I wouldn't even bother searching another site. I'll rather pay more money. And that research is found over and over again that if you make your site accessible, your customers will reward you for that. Finally, it's coming into law. So we all have to do this. It's not a thing that we can do because we just care about it because it makes us money. It's coming into law. So it's something that we all have to do by 2025. In the US, it's already written into law. And I think on average, 10 websites get sued a month because they're not accessible. Cool. So now, what are the accessibility criteria? Now, this is freely available online. This is research by the WebAMD, the Content Accessibility Guide. And the first thing is perceivable. And it's so easy to do, but 61% of websites have homepage errors. Now, this is your front door window. In a physical store, you will never leave anything broken. Your merchandising will be great. You'll make sure that everyone who's landing on your homepage has the best experience. But because this is not front and center of our minds, we don't think about our homepage in the same way. Imagine sending out an email campaign, someone clicking from there, going to your homepage, and then half of it is broken. And one of the major things about this is making sure that people can access your content via assisted technology. I mean, I tried myself to use one of the assisted technologies to read through a website, and it is so hard because you have to use your keyboard only without your mouse, and I found it so difficult to do. So what you want to do is to make sure that you're making that entry level as low as possible. I mean, easy things like alt text. When we're sending out emails, do you think about the image you're sending? Do you put alt text in them? Thinking about that, if someone is using a screen reader, what would they see? Or how would the screen reader interpret that image? The next one is capture. I mean, I work from home, and because I work in search, I get a million of this, and it's so annoying. So you can imagine if I was using a screen reader and I had to navigate through all of this to get to what I wanted to do. I think the greatest culprits are this, like empty links. So we know text, everyone can read text. Screen readers will interpret text because they're plain HTML. However, when it comes to like empty links, button, non-descriptive text, linked images that just have nothing at the back of it, all of these will come off as blanks. Sometimes the screen reader can get trapped in this and not know where it's going. Or you can imagine if you're on a website, you're scrolling through, you get to a place that's a link is empty, you get trapped in there, and all of a sudden you find yourself on a different website because it is taking you to a link without saying, click here to go on XYZ site. So all of these things just makes it really difficult and really confusing to access the web. The next one is some of us will be involved in multimedia campaigns. Not everyone does email only. Some people will be, digital specialists or digital marketers here, and we'll be involved in email campaigns, or you'll have things on Spotify, all of that. Just remembering that you need to create transcripts. Just remember that when you do your Instagram reels and then you put those auto captions on it, some people might not be able to read as fast. If you're using a screen reader, you want to make sure that you can pause, you can slow down. I always used to wonder when I see it on Spotify that you can increase the volumes or the speed, or you can slow down the speed. I used to wonder, I was like, what was that for? And then I realized that, these are all for accessibility. Now, create content that can be presented in different ways. So basically, content, again, they all tie together in a way, because these accessibility criteria, if you look at the 4 of them, when you put them side by side, I think if you start by doing one, you would just naturally see that they all fall into each other. Because if you're creating content that can be accessed in different format, it means video, text, downloadable, printable, etc. Those kind of things. I have to apologize for my slides, because when I created this, I didn't know that we will be like in a cinema, and I had this bright, bright yellow slides on this massive screen. Even myself, I'm struggling to read it now. But then again, and then ironically, I have use of color. So forgive me, I didn't know that the screen would be this massive. But then we all see on our phones when we try to like resize text, and then it clicks on something else. And we have a report in Google Search Console for anyone who's familiar with SEO, and one of the things that everyone hates to see, especially the designers, is when it says that the text is so close together. And everyone's like, why? It looks normal to me. But that's because some people need to resize their screens, and if the texts are too close together, it jumps all around. And this one, I think the tech community, we created this, isn't it? This is like a trend from Apple, because gray on white seems very minimalist, it seems very cool, and then it's become a trend to use white and gray text and all of those kind of things, and it becomes really difficult to read. So these are the kind of things that people who have color blindness or low color visibility, these will be issues for them. So just make sure that when we are creating things and we're thinking about design, and we are, trying to make something minimal, that we are considering what the impact is on other people. Again, using a screen reader, you can't use your mouse, you only have to use your keypad. So thinking about that and making sure that when we're putting things that have sequences, it can easily be interpreted by the screen reader. And that is making sure that things have responsive design, keyboard control, you can switch it, color contrast. Again, this is really, really key to social media, making sure that, when you have voiceovers and making sure that when you have text that's on top of videos, that people can take time to scroll through them, and people can pause it, and people can re-authenticate if they want to. I know this is getting less and less in design now, but before we used to see loads of flash elements and loads of shiny content, but that's getting better. That's getting better now. So, and these ones will be really essential if you have like a developer who does this, because this is also essential to tech SEO, where you have breadcrumbs, headers, titles, so people know where they are. And this is because the screen readers will crawl through all of those, they will read it out, and so it's easy for people to know where they are. So it's easy to say when you're doing a website that you can just ignore all of this, but remember that this is not just for you, this is for screen readers as well. Now, anyone who's in the SEO community will remember this website. It's called Linkers. And literally, this is what we're talking about when we say that, using too many shiny images and things that are blinking everywhere. Now, I think this one's really important for emails, and this is one that we use a lot, and that is making sure that your content is understandable. It's really interesting because there's what we call confirmation bias, where everyone who's creating this campaign, we all understand the product, we know what we're talking about, and so when we write about the product, we feel like everyone else will, but we forget that the average reading age is less than, I think it's grade 3. So there are various tools that we can use. To improve our readability, and then we have to think about things like abbreviation or the product. So I used to work for Aesop. I don't know if anyone knows that brand, and one of the things that they sold was something called post-poo drops, and I can see confusion in people's faces. Post-poo drops, and I was like, no one searches like this, and no one will understand. But they were so confident, and everyone in that room, and they really struggled to see, and they were like, oh, it's part of our brand, it's the way we identify ourselves. And that's what usually happens in all of these meetings where people have sold a product for years, they've worked on it, they all understand the lingo. It's very easy for them to speak this lingo and then just be confident that everyone understands it. So there is a tool, there are various tools. One of it is Hemingway, one of it is Readability, all of those tools that you can run your emails through, and it will show you like reading levels, highlight where you've used passive statement. It's difficult to read sentences and paragraphs and stuff like that. And then you can work on it, and you can set your reading age as well to whatever it is that, you know, your brand has identified, or your tone of voice, and use these tools to make sure that your messaging is passing that score. I think this is another one for designers as well. When we think that we want to create something out of the box, and people are used to scrolling up and we decide that our website should scroll sideways, or people are used to clicking a button at the end and we decide we're going to put it in the middle now just to throw everyone off. Remember that all of these things are there for a reason, because people have become used to that. If you or maybe if you're an Apple and you have loads of money behind your brand and you can create something all new, and then people will follow. But if you don't have the money to like re-educate people, just make sure that you're using usual conventions and designing things in the way that people understand. Now, this one is really interesting for forms. And this happens where you're trying to fill a form, especially any kind of form, and then you're inputting details, and then you get to the end. And I see this a lot with loads of websites and their payment checkout. You enter a card and it's wrong, or they don't accept Visa or something, and you just keep saying that payment failed, and there's no error popping up to tell you why the payment has failed. So this is one key thing to look out for. And I think Simon, who spoke before, who was talking about like not thinking about just open rates, thinking about what happens after you've sent your content out. When people come to the site, why is it that my conversion is low? This is one thing to go and look at and say, okay, what's happening on the site? Are people able to check out? Are people able to actually buy? So now that we know all the criteria that we're supposed to hit, how do you perform an accessibility audit? Now, this is really, really easy. There are, as I said, there is guidelines, there are bodies and so that regulate all of this, and you can go to their website and you can pick up like these criteria, you can pick up a checklist. And they also have an accessibility tool that you can install. And what it does is that you run a web page through it, and it shows you like all of the errors. And the good thing about it is that if you click on that error, it will explain to you why there's an error and how you can fix it. And I think it might be difficult to do this on a large scale for your entire website, because it will require loads of coding and you might not have time. But one of the good things that the way that email and SEO can work together, or whatever department you're in, is to say, okay, I'm sending out an email today. When I don't know, I'm sending it out on either product, or if it's B2B, I'm sending it out and telling people to check out XYZ page on our website. Go and run this tool on that particular page and make sure that the page is optimized for the visitors that you're going to attract. And if you're technically inclined, you can, download the API and do this for all the pages on your site, and then work with your developers to optimize that. If you have WordPress, there is a WordPress plugin that you can use on your site as well to get that report made. If you have Lighthouse, this is a tool that SEOs use a lot. You can also use Lighthouse to check your accessibility score. And I think what's most important is that only 25% of accessibility errors are detected by this tool. So for me, it's much more important that we're using human judgment when we're looking at our pages. So things like non-descriptive alt text, the tool will detect that there's an alt text there, but it can't tell you whether it's right for the content. Colors that convey meaning, people just think red, sales, the tool will be like, okay, there's a color there, but it doesn't know, it can't pick out what context that's supposed to be used in. Skip to content link. So all of these things might be detected, but then it doesn't explain the context and it might not be in the right context. So it's really important that we download a screen reader and try to see and try to experience our websites the way someone who has a disability would, or who has a visual disability. Now, screen readers, what they do, again, this is a technical bit, they look at your code and all of these things. If your developers are writing clean code, it will show how, that's why it's important to have like headings, breadcrumbs, all of those things, because all of those things are like a visual sitemap for the screen reader, because they use it to navigate, they use it to go through your site. Now, I hope this plays. Yes, it just takes a while, but this is one of the tabloid sites in the UK, and I tried to navigate it using a screen reader.
Home, UK Home, Daily Mail Online. Web, latest celebrity news. News, link list item. US, sport, TV and show, health.
So now that there was no way for me to skip and go down. I had to scroll through all the headers of the page.
TikTok. Link, blue swim, soaps, link list item, puzzle, login, privacy policy, feedback.
It took
12 p.m., 27 degrees Celsius, sunny.
So I had
Previous
to start
slide.
Navigation
Button.
again.
Go to slide 3. Button pressed.
So that just said button press. It didn't tell me where I was. It didn't tell
slide.
me which button. And this
Go
is
to
me.
slide
I
3.
can see. So I was
Button
really
press
trying
list.
to go to the next place.
Mail online, news, sport, list with.
So now I've got into the news I want to read. I have to go through the whole navigation bar again. There was no place for me to skip and go through to the main content.
List with 7 items. Link list item.
So you can see how bad that experience was for me. And I could see I was really trying to use the buttons to go. And so you can imagine if I had a visual impairment and I actually couldn't see what I was pressing. And this is slightly better. This is from the Independent.
Webview. News. Jump to content.
So you see that has the jump to content link that it should. And that helped me to get to my content quicker.
Subscribe. Login. List with 14 items. List item. Independent. List item. List item. List item. List item. Trap. List. 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 Indie. List item. List item. Amazon Prime. Open search. Button. Toggle between international editions. Button. List with 3 items. List item. Sunny. Braverman as our next PM. Be afraid. Be very afraid. List item. Kathy Newman. Link.
So I think I'll just conclude on this. I love this quote by Mike Gifford. And it says, any of us could find the abilities we enjoy today gone tomorrow. To be inclusive, companies have to be more creative, welcoming, and go beyond the required regulations. I think all of these things are very technical, and probably we're not the people in our businesses that are in charge of ensuring that they work. However, as digital marketers, we have a responsibility and we have power. And if you say to someone, I'm sending out this campaign, and this is the experience on the landing page I'm sending people to, they will sit up and take notice. And so we can do more than we are doing now. Thank you.
All right, questions? Awesome.
Yes.
This gentleman here, and then I'll bring it up.
Okay. Thank you very much for this. Who owns accessibility? That is the issue. Because I have already helped the company introduce the accessibility features on the website, on the content, on email, and it didn't work because there wasn't any sponsorship. That sponsorship should come from marketing, IT, corporate social responsibility, who knows? And the thing, I don't want to bother you much more with the details, is that we need more figures and data about assistive technologies, about users of assistive technologies, as well as about demographic data, if we do have from the W3C consortium that enforces the accessibility standards, in order for us to make a business case. Because I have tried also to discuss that with the suppliers, and they couldn't give me a robust business case so as for the sponsor to introduce the accessibility features. For people and for companies who are trying to be lean or cost-cutting leaders, let's say, they say it's a nice-to-have element, it's not a need-to-have. Any thoughts about that? How would you approach that?
I think I'm SEO, so I've always tried to be responsible for it, but I wholly understand what you're saying, because what happens in a company is that a website is built, everything is considered, and then you're trying to put plasters on it. Ideally, the developer should own it right from build, and then that way it's easy. And that's why I said, I didn't want to do too technical presentation here, not the right audience, but ideally if the developers write clean code, the reason why you can't track if screen readers are accessing your website is because it's a protected, disability is protected, and they don't want, it can lead to discrimination. That's the reason why. So yeah, everyone has been pushing for you to be able to track if screen readers access your site, but yeah, we've been told it wouldn't be done because it's a protected characteristics. But I would say if you keep pushing and you keep saying, okay, I'm sending out something, and maybe you break it down in small chunks, because it's harder to do as an entire website, but you break it down in small chunks, then it might be easier.
Thank you so much, Miracle. Great presentation. And I would like to quote here Mark Robbins, who says that if email is not accessible, it's broken. And, just quoting the previous speaker also, companies oftentimes says, oh, it's not a high priority, it's nice to have, and absolutely disagree. But, however, I know, and in my experience, a lot of companies, they implement this just to get a certificate. Yeah. And that's it. So what are there another business case, how I can show revenue coming? Maybe you have some tricks. Thank you.
I think work with your CRO team, because even though you can't identify if people are using screen readers, you can't see how people are accessing your site. And then if you have a technical team like the SEO team that can help you with identify when things are broken and do these audits and kind of own it. I think that is the downside to this. The only study I could find on revenue is the click away pound, and it doesn't even break it down. It just says 17 billion, which seems very abstract to anyone that you're speaking to, isn't it? So, and that's why I just try to get people to think about it more. And that's why I use the video with the screen reader, because it is, color contrast, blah, 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 who cares, isn't it? But when you show people that experience, so maybe take one of those pages and actually use a screen reader and try to navigate it and show someone that this is the experience people are getting. And it's a good thing that it's coming into law by 2025 and say, this is coming into law in the EU. So if you don't do it, we will be liable to get sued. And so that way people will sit up and take notice.
I have two questions. The first one might be very silly, but I've been trying to figure out how to do that. So how do you simulate a screen reader, or how do you, is this something that I can just
Google? So you can't, they're not free. And the one I've used is the cheapest and lousiest, but it's the Google Chrome one. So Google Chrome has one, and then you can just download it and add it as an extension, and then say disable keypads and everything and read with screen reader. But screen readers are really expensive.
Okay. For some reason, I don't know. Maybe it's just what I was thinking from years ago, and I had it stuck in my head that it was a separate device, but that's silly. Forget I said that. My other question that is not as silly is the tools that you showed us about kind of auditing your site. Do they take into account interactive elements as well? And if not, how do we look at that? Are there standards already that say these particular interactive elements are just not accessible? Or how can we sort of audit interactive elements on websites?
So at scale, I would say your developers will have to help you with that. However, if you're doing it, if you use a screen reader, then you can see how interactive. And these are the things where tools will not always pick up interactive elements because they're just looking at the code and they might not understand it. So at scale, probably reference your developer. If you find the good thing is that pages are built with templates. So if you find it on one page template, most likely it's going to be on a series of pages that have that element. So if you isolate your site and usually sites have about 4 or 5 templates. And so if you crawl through or if you use it on one of those 5 templates and see what issues you find, and then it should hopefully be a site-wide fix.
And if you are a one-person operation and you are your developer, Google, I would think, right?
Yeah, it's very difficult to push, and that is why accessibility talks. I'm not surprised we got this audience. It's very hard to push through, and when you have 1,000,001 things, so I do understand the pain is real, but yeah,
Not even that, like just figuring out how to do it. So
how to do it.
The reason why I'm asking you is because I noticed that I have sort of a toggle on my website, and I noticed that it works differently on mobile, and it seems to be likely very inaccessible. So I'd love to know how to fix that, but I don't know how to fix it. So
is there any SEO person in your company?
It's just me.
Oh dear, because I would say the SEO, if there was a tech SEO person, the person should be able to look at the code. Like I could, sorry, I'm going geeky on you now, but if you share it with me, I can have a look for you when I get back home.
Okay.
Yeah, I can look at the code for you and tell you if it's JavaScript or if it's even getting crawled or anything.
Cool.